In December 1972, after having built the marketplace of Otavalo, Tonny decided to visit the Galápagos Islands, also part of Ecuador. These volcanic islands, discovered in 1555, had inspired Charles Darwin to formulate his thoughts about evolution. Darwin studied the variety of plants and animals in accordance with the circumstances on the different islands. On her visit in 1972, Tonny saw the self-regulating freedom of the animals in this paradise. She thought it must be possible to design architecture that presents the same sort of freedom. In 1973, Tonny traveled to Oaxaca, Mexico, where she built a cabin in El Punto Ixtepeji, in the mountain area of the Sierra Juarez. In a poem, Tonny's 5-year-old daughter Polita named their first house Casa Luna, because at night the vault of heaven is full of an infinite number of bright stars. Over the years, they planted hundreds of pine trees and cypresses on the eroded mountain slope. After a period of 12 years, the trees propagated themselves. Their neighbors across the road were the children Pancha, Carmela, Mario, and Juan Yescas. Pancha married according to the Zapotec tradition. Juan, the engineer of the family, is building his own house with the help of his proud father Don Adrian. Carmela, here with her daughter Carina, owns a nursery for potted plants. Every 2 weeks, she sells her plants on the marketplace of Oaxaca. It was around 500 BC that the Zapotecs decided to build a new community on a mountain in the center of Oaxaca Valley. They flattened the mountaintop. It was the best place to overlook the 3 branches of the valley. Building a city would help control of the trade routes. The Zapotecs had a great sense of architecture. They created a place between heaven and earth. After the conquest, the Spanish architect Alfonso Garcia Bravo traced out the urban plan of Mexico City. He also came to Oaxaca to design a city on a smaller scale. The Zócalo, or central square of Oaxaca City, with its covered galleries, is a popular meeting place. In the 16th century, the monastery of Santo Domingo was built. It's now been restored as a valuable architectural monument. Monks used to teach the fine arts and maintained a botanical garden. The church's entrance hall is adorned with the family tree of the Dominican order in the form of a vine with leafy branches. Not far away from Santo Domingo, Spanish nuns founded the convent of Santa Catalina in 1576. In 1976, 400 years later, its ruins were restored and it was converted into a hotel. Following Tonny's advice, the restoration design respected the original atmosphere and architecture of the convent's patios. The only new element added was a swimming pool in the former courtyard. The temple-shaped hexagonal fountain in one of the patios is an architectural gem. The overflowing water spills into 12 reservoirs, which in turn serve water to 12 ceramic dishes where the nuns used to wash their linen. After their arrival in La Mixteca early in the 16th century, Spanish Dominican monks built 15 monasteries in this region. In Tepozcolula, not far from Yanhuitlan, the monks built a monastery with a so-called open chapel. These open chapels served as open-air theaters. They were built because the Indians refused to enter a closed, roofed-over church building. In Tepozcolula, La Casa de la Cacica, the palace of a Mixtec princess, deserves attention as a singular example of Indian architecture. The recent restoration is maybe a little overdone, but shows the importance this Cacica palace once had. In 1974 and 5, Tonny wrote a book, Fantasy and Architecture, based on the drawings by her child, in which she came to the following conclusions. By observing the world of plants and animals, one discovers a self-regulating dynamic life. The child manifests a capacity to associate thoughts and to express its ideas. Through observation of nature, men and women can recognize and express symbols in their drawings and other art forms. The path to the house is the communication between mother and child. Entering the house is like a return into mother's womb. The spatial need of four corners is the abstraction of man's two arms and two legs. The symmetry is the representation of a standing man. The need for a center is a sexual, female desire for a creative element. Its representation can be the image of a king, a flower, or a tree. It also can be an empty square, where visiting people will represent the dynamic male element. Tepoztlan is the village in Mexico where Tonny's Volo, Martin Ruiz Camino and their daughter Polita settled in 1975. The village had then an originally Nahua population, which once a year still honored their ancient god Tepoztecatl. At the time of the Aztec rule, Tepoztlan was a stopover on the pilgrim's route from Guatemala to the pyramid city Xochicalco, where they visited the Templo de Quetzalcoatl. In the 4 years between 1976 and 1980, 2 more children are born, her Tepozteco sons Cristobal and Antonio. The kitchen and dining room were the center of this house. The backyard had a kitchen garden. Tonny's Tepoztlan home is known as the European house. Special in Tepoztlan's history is the amate tree, a wild fig from which the indigenous population used to make bark paper. In 1985, Tonny decided to move to Lomas de Cocoyoc in Oaxacan. With the future in mind, Tonny designed a house in which the children would each have a room of their own. A sloping roof comes down from the second floor, covering the kitchen and the studio on either side of the patio. The high ceilings in the corridor keep the house cool. Water is abundant in the state of Morelos. The meltwater of the snow-covered volcanoes goes underground to come up again in the form of natural springs. Not far from the monastery the Spaniards built in Oaxtepec on a former pyramid platform, a river rises between the rocks. Legend has it that the Aztec emperors were immersed in the fresh water of this blue pool for their morning bath. Oaxtepec and Cocoyoc formed part of Cortés' Marquisate. In the 17th century, Hacienda Cocoyoc became the most important ingenio, or sugar factory, in Nueva España. Its age-old trees have practically grown into the walls. Because of the beauty of the scenery, Martin Ruiz, Tonny's partner, bought her a piece of land in Guendulain, where in the 17th century was a hacienda of this name. In 1993, Tonny designed a large square house with a patio in the center. All the rooms of the house are facing outwards. A corridor going round the patio connects the rooms. The patio, a still center, provides light and ventilation. The large rooms are covered by vaults of handmade brick. These vaults create a heaven-like feeling of spaciousness. A dowser was called in to help find the best place for digging a well. A wooden platform for the installation of the water tank is supported by 4 telephone poles. On the east side, a huge hole still gives evidence of the former brickyard that had functioned there. Creating a swimming pool would be a possibility. However, because of the porous ground in Gwendouline, a concrete base was necessary to make the pool watertight. Water plants will surround the pool, giving it a natural look. In the future, the pond will attract even more birds than it does now.